The blood-red sun cast long shadows over the dusty streets of Promise Creek as Liam North rode into town, a man pursued not by outlaws, but by the whispers of his own reputation. The year was 1879, and the West was still wild enough that a man could reinvent himself, or so Liam had hoped when he'd arrived 6 months ago, his past trailing behind him like a dark cloud. Dust coated his weathered boots as he dismounted outside the town's only saloon, the Silver Dollar. His chestnut mare, Penny, whickered softly as he secured her to the hitching post. His hand lingered on her neck, drawing comfort from the animal's steady presence before he squared his shoulders and pushed through the saloon's swinging doors. The familiar scent of whiskey, tobacco, and unwashed bodies greeted him. Piano notes tinkled in the corner, played by a man whose talent had likely been drowned in a bottle years ago. Liam kept his head down, making his way to the bar where Joe, the owner, was polishing glasses with a questionable rag. "The usual?" Joe asked, already reaching for the bottle of rye. Liam nodded, placing a coin on the scarred wooden surface. "Heard anything from the Donovan ranch?" Joe's bushy eyebrows drew together. "Just that they're still looking for someone to help with their cattle drive next month. Why? You thinking of applying, maybe?" Liam took a long sip of his drink, welcoming the burn. Honest work's hard to come by these days, especially for a man with your... Joe hesitated, his eyes darting around the room. Reputation. The word hung between them, heavy with implication. Liam had heard the whispers: liar, cheat, fraud. They'd followed him from town to town, sometimes preceding his arrival like unwelcome heralds. "I go where the work is," Liam said simply. A commotion at the entrance drew their attention. A woman stood framed in the doorway, her posture straight and proud despite the obvious weariness in her stance. Her burgundy traveling dress was dusty from the road, but even at a distance, Liam could see she wasn't a typical frontier woman. There was a refinement to her, from her carefully pinned chestnut hair to the way she surveyed the room with cautious green eyes. The saloon fell into an unusual hush as she made her way to the bar, ignoring the stares that followed her. She placed herself 2 stools away from Liam. "Madam," Joe nodded respectfully. "What can I get you?" "Information, please," she said, her voice clear and cultured. "I'm looking for the Donovan ranch. I was told in Denver that Mr. Donovan might have work available." Joe shot a quick glance at Liam before answering. "Yes, madam. That'd be about 15 miles northeast of town. But if you don't mind my saying, the Donovans are looking for hands for their cattle drive. Not exactly ladies' work." She smiled tightly. "I'm not applying to be a ranch hand, mister. Just Joe, madam. I'm Victoria Donovan, Nathaniel Donovan's niece." Joe's eyes widened. "I didn't realize Mr. Donovan was expecting family." "He isn't." Her smile faltered slightly. "My arrival will be a surprise." Liam found himself watching her with interest. There was something about the set of her jaw that spoke of determination and perhaps desperation. "The stage to Ridge Pass doesn't leave until morning," Joe said. "You'll need a place to stay tonight." Victoria nodded. "Is there a hotel in town?" "The Promise Creek Inn just down the street," Joe replied. "It's not fancy, but it's clean." "Thank you." She hesitated, then asked, "Would there perhaps be someone willing to escort me to my uncle's ranch tomorrow? I'd pay, of course." Before Joe could respond, Liam found himself speaking. "I can take you, madam." Victoria turned, noticing him properly for the first time. Her gaze was assessing but not unkind. "This here's Liam North," Joe said, a slight warning in his tone. "He's a cowboy," Liam interrupted firmly. "I know the way to the Donovan place." Victoria studied him for a moment longer before nodding. "Very well, Mr. North." "What would you charge for such a service?" $5 should cover it," That seems fair. She reached into her reticule and extracted a small purse. Shall we say 8 o'clock tomorrow morning? I'll meet you here. Liam tipped his hat. Yes, madam. After confirming directions to the inn, Victoria departed, leaving a swirl of whispers in her wake. Joe fixed Liam with a disapproving look. What are you playing at North? That's Nathaniel Donovan's kin. Liam drained his glass. Just helping a lady in need. And it has nothing to do with you trying to get work at the Donovan ranch. Joe snorted. You think escorting his niece will make him forget what folks say about you? I don't much care what folks say about me, Liam replied, though they both knew it for the lie it was. Joe leaned forward, lowering his voice. Word travels north. They say you conned half of Silverton before you came here, that you sold shares in a mine that didn't exist. Liam's jaw tightened. If that were true, I'd be sitting pretty somewhere instead of looking for ranch work. Maybe. Or maybe you're just working some new angle. Joe straightened up. That girl seems decent. Don't go dragging her into your schemes. I'm just giving her a ride to her uncle's, Liam said, pushing away from the bar. Nothing more. But as he stepped back into the fading daylight, Liam wondered if he was lying to Joe or to himself. The morning brought clear skies and a cool breeze, a blessing in the heat of late summer. Liam arrived at the saloon early, having spent a restless night in his small room above the livery. He'd rented the space when he'd first arrived in Promise Creek, telling himself it was temporary until he found proper work. He'd fed and saddled Penny, then secured a gentle Palomino mare from the livery for Victoria. Tim, the stable boy, had given him a knowing look that Liam had pretended not to notice. Victoria arrived precisely at 8, wearing a practical riding habit of deep blue. Her hair was neatly braided and pinned up beneath a modest hat, and she carried a small valise. Good morning, Mr. North, she greeted him with a polite nod. Madam. Liam tipped his hat. I've secured a horse for you. Hope you don't mind riding astride. A brief smile crossed her features. I prefer it, actually. They set off at a steady pace, the town quickly falling behind them. The landscape opened up before them, rolling hills dotted with sagebrush, and the occasional stand of cottonwoods near hidden creeks. In the distance, the jagged peaks of the mountains stood sentinel against the sky. For the first hour, they rode in companionable silence. Liam found himself stealing glances at his companion, noting the confident way she sat in the saddle and the thoughtful expression on her face as she surveyed the terrain. You ride well, he commented eventually. Thank you, Victoria replied. I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania. Smaller than the ranches out here, but we had horses. What brings you all the way to Colorado territory, if you don't mind my asking? Victoria hesitated, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Family matters, she said finally. My parents passed away last winter, influenza. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. She turned to look at him properly. And what about you, Mr. North? Are you from these parts originally? No, madam, I grew up in Texas. It wasn't a lie, though it skirted the truth of his recent past. And now you work as a cowboy, when I can find the work, Liam admitted. Times are harder since the panic of '73. Victoria nodded thoughtfully. My father lost much of his savings during that time. It's part of why I'm here now. They lapsed into silence again as they forded a shallow creek, the horses' hooves sending up sprays of glittering water. On the other side, Liam pointed to a distant smudge on the landscape. That's the Donovan ranch up ahead, one of the biggest spreads in this part of Colorado. Victoria straightened in her saddle, her expression a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. Have you met my uncle? Once or twice. He comes into town for supplies sometimes. What kind of man is he? The question caught Liam off guard. Hard-working, fair from what I've heard, keeps to himself mostly. Victoria seemed to absorb this information, her brow furrowing slightly. I haven't seen him since I was a child. My mother, his sister, they had a falling out many years ago. And yet you're seeking him out now. As I said, family matters. Her tone suggested she didn't wish to elaborate further. As they drew closer to the ranch, details emerged: a large main house built of sturdy logs, several outbuildings, corrals filled with horses, and in the distance, the dark shapes of cattle grazing on the hillsides. A man emerged from the barn as they approached, shading his eyes against the sun. "That's your uncle," Liam said quietly. Nathaniel Donovan was a tall man with graying hair and a weathered face that had seen decades of sun and hard work. He watched their approach with wary curiosity, his hand resting casually near the gun on his hip, a habit of caution rather than overt hostility. Liam helped Victoria dismount before swinging down from his own horse. He touched the brim of his hat respectfully as Donovan approached. "Mr. Donovan," he greeted, "I've brought someone to see you." Nathaniel's gaze shifted to Victoria, confusion evident in his expression before a flicker of recognition crossed his features. "Mary's girl," Victoria nodded, her composure wavering slightly. "Yes, Uncle Nathaniel, I'm Victoria." The older man's face remained impassive, though his eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "Last I saw you, you were knee-high to a grasshopper." "It's been a long time," Victoria agreed. 20 years, I believe." A heavy silence fell between them, laden with unspoken history. Finally, Nathaniel cleared his throat. "Well, you'd better come inside." He turned to Liam. "Thank you for bringing my niece north." Liam recognized the dismissal for what it was. "Happy to help, sir." Victoria turned to him, extending her hand. "Thank you for your assistance, Mr. North." Liam took her hand briefly, surprised by the warmth of her grip. "My pleasure, Miss Donovan." As he prepared to mount Penny again, Nathaniel stopped him. "North, isn't it? I've heard talk in town that you're looking for work." Liam stiffened, wondering what else the rancher had heard. "Yes, sir." Nathaniel studied him for a long moment. "We're short-handed for the drive next month. Stop by tomorrow if you're interested. Can't promise anything, but we'll talk." Hope surged in Liam's chest, quickly tempered by caution. "I appreciate that, Mr. Donovan." As he rode away, Liam glanced back to see Victoria and her uncle walking toward the house, a careful distance between them. He wondered about the story there, the old wounds that had brought her across the country to a relative she barely knew. And he wondered if he dared take Donovan up on his offer, knowing that sooner or later the whispers would reach the rancher's ears if they hadn't already. The next morning, Liam found himself riding back to the Donovan ranch, torn between hope and the nagging certainty that he was making a mistake. But jobs were scarce, and winter would come early to these mountains. He couldn't afford pride. Victoria was in the yard when he arrived, feeding chickens from a basket at her hip. She looked different today, her hair in a simple braid down her back, wearing a plain work dress and apron. She looked more at home than he would have expected after just one night. She spotted him and raised a hand in greeting, a smile warming her features. "Mr. North, you've returned." "Your uncle mentioned he might have work," Liam explained as he dismounted. "Is he around in the barn?" Victoria set down her basket. "I'll walk with you." As they crossed the yard, Liam noted the easy way she navigated the space, as though she'd been there much longer than a day. "You're settling in quickly." "Farm life is farm life, even on this scale," she replied. "The routines are familiar, even if the landscape is different." She glanced at him curiously. "Have you worked many cattle drives, Mr. North?" "A few," he admitted. "Mostly in Texas, some in Kansas." "Then your experience would be valuable here. Uncle Nathaniel mentioned they lost several hands last month." "Lost?" Liam raised an eyebrow. To a silver strike near Leadville, apparently. Victoria's expression turned thoughtful. Men chase dreams, Mr. North, sometimes at the expense of steady work. There was something in her tone that made Liam wonder if she knew more about him than she let on. Nathaniel Donovan was inspecting a horse's hoof when they entered the barn. He straightened at their approach, nodding a greeting. "North, you came." "Yes, sir, about that job." Donovan patted the horse's neck before releasing its leg. "Victoria, would you mind giving us a moment?" She nodded, but before leaving she turned to Liam. "I hope you'll stay for dinner, Mr. North, regardless of how this conversation goes." After she'd gone, Nathaniel fixed Liam with a penetrating stare. "You've got a reputation, North." Liam's heart sank, but he kept his expression neutral. "Most men do, one way or another. Joe at the saloon says folks in Silverton claim you swindled them with a fake mine." "And do you believe everything you hear in saloons, Mr. Donovan?" The rancher's mouth twitched. "No, but I believe in looking a man in the eye when I ask him a question." He stepped closer. "Did you con those people in Silverton?" Liam held the older man's gaze, his throat suddenly dry. The weight of the past few years pressed down on him, the mistakes, the lies, the constant running. He'd come west with dreams that had crumbled to dust in his hands, and somewhere along the way, truth had become a luxury he couldn't afford. But standing here, with the possibility of honest work before him and the memory of Victoria's trusting smile fresh in his mind, the words that came out surprised even him. "They're right," he said quietly. Donovan's eyebrows rose, clearly not expecting such a direct admission. Liam continued before he lost his nerve. "I was desperate, lost everything in a bad investment after the panic, thought I could make it back quick with a scheme." He shook his head. "I never meant it to go as far as it did. And yet it did." "Yes, sir, it did." Liam squared his shoulders. "I can't undo it, but I'm trying to live honest now." Nathaniel studied him for a long moment. "Why admit it? You could have denied it." "Been denying it for too long," Liam said. "Guess I'm tired of running from it." The rancher nodded slowly, as if coming to a decision. "I need men I can trust, North. Not just with my cattle, but with my life and the lives of my crew." "I understand." "The pay is $30 a month plus room and board. Drive starts in 3 weeks and should last about a month, getting the herd to the railhead in Cheyenne. If you work out, there might be permanent position after." Liam blinked in surprise. "You're hiring me, even knowing what I did." "I'm hiring you because you finally told the truth about it," Nathaniel clarified. "Man who can admit his mistakes might be worth taking a chance on." He extended his hand. "But this is your only chance with me, North." "Understood." Liam clasped the offered hand firmly. "Yes, sir, thank you. You can start tomorrow. Bunkhouse is behind the main barn. For tonight, Victoria's invitation to dinner stands." As Liam followed Nathaniel toward the house, a weight he'd carried for years seemed to lighten, if only by a fraction. One truth told after so many lies. It was a start. The weeks leading up to the cattle drive were filled with back-breaking work, mending fences, branding strays, breaking horses, and preparing supplies. Liam threw himself into the labor, determined to prove Nathaniel's faith in him wasn't misplaced. To his surprise, Victoria remained at the ranch instead of returning east. She had taken over running the household with quiet efficiency, much to the relief of Nathaniel's longtime cook, Mrs. Hawkins, whose arthritis had been making the work increasingly difficult. Liam found himself looking forward to the evenings when the ranch hands would gather in the main house for dinner. Victoria made a point of engaging everyone in conversation, drawing out stories of their lives and travels. She seemed genuinely interested in each man's background, asking questions that revealed a sharp intelligence and curiosity about the world beyond her Eastern upbringing. She never asked Liam about his past directly, though sometimes he caught her watching him with thoughtful eyes when she thought he wasn't looking. He wondered what she knew, what Nathaniel might have told her. 2 weeks into his employment, Liam was repairing a saddle on the porch when Victoria emerged from the house carrying 2 cups of coffee. She offered one to him and settled on the bench nearby. "May I join you for a moment, Mr. North?" "Of course." Liam set aside his work, taking the cup gratefully. "And please call me Liam. Mr. North makes me feel like my father," she smiled. "Then you must call me Victoria." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching the activity in the yard as ranch hands prepared for the day's work. "My uncle speaks highly of your work ethic," Victoria said eventually. "He says you're one of the best hands he's hired in years." Liam felt a surge of pride at the unexpected praise. "Your uncle's a fair man. I'm grateful for the opportunity. He mentioned you had some difficulties before coming here, and there it was." Liam stared into his coffee cup. "Did he tell you what kind of difficulties?" "Some," Victoria admitted. "He said you'd made mistakes but were honest about them when confronted." She turned to face him directly. "I admire that, Liam. Honesty, especially when it's difficult, takes courage." Her words caught him off guard. He'd expected judgment, not understanding. "Most people wouldn't call it admirable to admit to being a liar and a cheat," he said quietly. "Perhaps not, but we've all done things we regret." Victoria's gaze drifted toward the mountains. "When my parents died, I discovered my father had mortgaged our farm to invest in railroad stocks. He lost everything in the panic. The bank foreclosed 2 months after his funeral." "I'm sorry," Liam said, understanding now why she had traveled so far to seek out an estranged relative. "For years he told us the farm was prospering," she continued. "He lied to protect us from worry, I suppose, but those lies left my mother and me unprepared for the truth when it finally came." Her eyes returned to Liam's face. "Sometimes I think honesty might have been kinder, even if it hurt at the time." "Sometimes the truth feels like a luxury," Liam admitted. "When you're desperate enough." Victoria nodded thoughtfully. "What made you tell the truth to my uncle?" "You could have continued denying the rumors." The question made Liam pause, searching for an answer he himself wasn't entirely sure of. "I think I was just tired," he said finally. "Tired of running, tired of remembering which lies I'd told to which people. And maybe—" he hesitated, "maybe I wanted to see if I could still recognize the truth when I spoke it." "And did you—" Their eyes met, and Liam felt something shift between them, a recognition of shared understanding. "Yes," he said softly. "It felt different, lighter somehow." Victoria smiled, a genuine warmth that reached her eyes. "Then start telling me the truth, Liam North. I'd like to know the real man behind the rumors." The invitation in her words to be known, to be understood, both terrified and enticed him. "That might take a while." "We have time," she replied simply. "The cattle drive doesn't leave for another week." Over the next several days, Liam found himself sharing pieces of his life with Victoria during stolen moments while helping her gather eggs in the morning, or in the brief quiet of evening when the work was done. He told her about growing up on a small ranch in Texas, losing his parents to fever when he was 16, working cattle drives to survive. He spoke of his dreams of having his own land someday, and how those dreams had led him to risk everything on a silver mining venture that failed spectacularly in '73. "After I lost everything, I was desperate," he explained one evening as they walked along the creek that bordered the ranch. "I met a man in Denver who showed me how easy it was to sell shares in a mine that didn't exist. Said we'd be gone before anyone knew the difference." "But you weren't," Victoria guessed. "No. I started believing my own lies, I think. Convinced myself we'd find silver eventually and make it right." Liam shook his head at his own foolishness. "By the time I realized the truth, people had invested their life savings. When it all fell apart, I ran rather than face them." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "What would you do differently now if you could go back?" The question wasn't accusatory, merely curious, but it forced Liam to confront something he'd avoided thinking about. "I'd face the consequences," he said finally. "Find a way to make restitution, even if it took years." "Perhaps you still can," she suggested gently. The idea took root in Liam's mind. A possibility he hadn't considered, that redemption might not require erasing the past, but rather facing it directly. Their conversations weren't one-sided. Victoria shared her own story, her sheltered upbringing, her brief engagement to a man who disappeared when her family's fortunes failed, her journey west with nothing but hope, and a letter her mother had written to Nathaniel years ago but never sent. "I wasn't sure he would even receive me," she admitted. "The quarrel between him and my mother was bitter, though neither would ever speak of its cause." "Yet he welcomed you without hesitation," Liam observed. Victoria smiled sadly. "Time and loss have a way of putting old grievances in perspective, I suppose. He said he regretted the years of silence, but didn't know how to bridge them." As the day of the cattle drive approached, Liam found himself increasingly reluctant to leave. Something had grown between him and Victoria, a connection deeper than mere attraction, though that existed too in the quickening of his pulse when their hands accidentally touched, or in the way her cheeks flushed when he held her gaze too long. The night before the drive, the ranch hands gathered for a final meal together. The atmosphere was boisterous with anticipation, men swapping tales of previous drives and speculating about the journey ahead. Liam found himself quieter than usual, his eyes frequently drawn to Victoria as she moved about the room, making sure everyone had their fill. After dinner, as the men dispersed to finalize preparations, Liam found Victoria on the porch, gazing at the stars that blanketed the clear night sky. "Beautiful night," he said, coming to stand beside her. "It is." She turned to him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Liam replied, "though I find myself wishing the drive wasn't happening just yet." Victoria's expression softened. "I'll miss our conversations. Just the conversations." The words slipped out before he could stop them. In the silvery moonlight, her blush was barely visible. "No," she admitted quietly, "not just the conversations." Liam took a step closer. "Victoria, there you are, north." Nathaniel's voice broke the moment as he stepped onto the porch. "Got a minute? Need to go over the route one more time." "Of course, sir." Liam glanced apologetically at Victoria before following her uncle inside. The words he'd been about to say still caught in his throat. Dawn broke clear and cold the next morning as the ranch hands gathered the herd, nearly 2,000 head of cattle that would make the journey to Cheyenne. The air filled with dust, the lowing of cattle, and the shouts of cowboys as they organized the massive undertaking. Liam secured his bedroll to his saddle, checking Penny's tack one final time. He'd been looking for Victoria since sunrise but hadn't caught a glimpse of her. The thought of leaving without saying goodbye sat like a stone in his chest. Just as the foreman gave the signal to move out, he spotted her hurrying across the yard. Relief flooded through him as he dismounted to meet her. "I thought you weren't coming to see us off," he said. "I wouldn't miss it." Victoria was slightly breathless, as though she'd been running. "I wanted to give you this." She pressed a small package into his hands. Unwrapping it, Liam found a handkerchief embroidered with his initials in blue thread. "I worked on it all week," she admitted. It's not much, but it's perfect, Liam said, his throat tight with emotion. He carefully tucked it into his shirt pocket close to his heart. I'll bring it back to you. See that you do. Her voice wavered slightly. I'll be here. The simple promise, I'll be here, carried more weight than elaborate declarations might have. In a world where both of them had experienced abandonment and loss, the assurance of presence was profound. Impulsively, Liam reached for her hand, bringing it to his lips in a gesture that was both old-fashioned and deeply sincere. I have something to return to now, he said softly. Victoria's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Be safe, Liam. North, we're moving out, the foreman called. With a final squeeze of her hand, Liam mounted Penny and rode to take his position. As the massive herd began to move, he looked back to see Victoria watching from the porch, her hand raised in farewell. For the first time in years, Liam felt the pull of a place and a person worth returning to. The cattle drive was as grueling as Liam remembered long days in the saddle, short nights of fitful sleep interrupted by guard duty, constant vigilance against stampedes, rustlers, and the unpredictable forces of nature. But unlike previous drives, he had purpose beyond the paycheck waiting at the end. Each night, he would take out Victoria's handkerchief, running his thumb over the carefully stitched initials, and remember her promise. I'll be here. One evening, as they camped near the Wyoming border, Victoria Donovan joined Liam by the fire after most of the other men had turned in. You're doing good work, North, the rancher said, accepting the cup of coffee Liam offered. Got a steady hand with the cattle. Thank you, sir. Nathaniel studied him over the rim of his cup. Something on your mind. You've been quieter than usual this trip. Liam hesitated, then decided on honesty. I've been thinking about your niece, actually. Figured as much. Nathaniel's expression was unreadable in the firelight. Victoria's a special woman, smart, strong. Yes, she is. She's also had her share of disappointments. The older man's voice took on a protective edge, men making promises they don't intend to keep. Liam met his gaze directly. I understand your concern, sir, but I'm not that man anymore. Aren't you? Nathaniel challenged. How do I know this isn't just another scheme? Get close to my niece, work your way into the family, maybe get a piece of the ranch someday. The accusation stung, but Liam recognized the fear behind it, the fear of a man who had already lost one family member to poor judgment and didn't want to see another hurt. You don't know, Liam admitted. You're taking a chance on me, just like you did when you hired me. All I can offer is my word that my feelings for Victoria are genuine. Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment, poking at the fire with a stick. When Mary Victoria's mother fell for that Eastern banker, I warned her he was more interested in our family's land than in her. She didn't listen. When it all went bad, she blamed me for not supporting her choice. He sighed heavily. That's why we didn't speak for 20 years. I didn't know, Liam said softly. Victoria doesn't know either, not the whole story. Nathaniel fixed Liam with a penetrating stare. I'm telling you because I need you to understand what's at stake. I won't lose her too. I would never hurt her, Liam promised. And I'm not after the ranch or any other gain. If all Victoria ever offered me was her friendship, it would still be more than I deserve. Something in Nathaniel's expression eased. When we get back, he said finally, if you still feel this way, you have my blessing to court her properly. But North, his voice hardened, if you're lying to me about this, there won't be a place far enough for you to run. I understand, sir. Liam extended his hand. And I'm not lying. Not anymore. The rest of the drive passed without major incident. When they finally reached Cheyenne, the cattle were sold at a good price, and Nathaniel paid the men their wages with a bonus for the successful journey. As they prepared for the return trip, Liam used part of his earnings to purchase a small silver brooch shaped like a wildflower, simple but elegant, like Victoria herself. The journey back to the ranch seemed to take twice as long, though in reality it was much faster without the herd to manage. When they finally crested the hill that overlooked the Donovan property, Liam's heart quickened at the sight of smoke rising from the chimney of the main house. As they rode into the yard, Victoria emerged onto the porch, shading her eyes against the setting sun. Her face lit up when she spotted the returning party, her smile widening as her gaze found Liam among the dusty, trail-worn cowboys. He dismounted quickly, barely taking time to secure Penny before crossing to the porch. Victoria hurried down the steps to meet him, propriety momentarily forgotten in her joy. "You're back," she said, her voice catching slightly. "I promised I would be." Liam was acutely aware of the other ranch hands watching them, but found he didn't care. "I have something for you." He reached into his pocket and withdrew the small package containing the brooch. Victoria unwrapped it carefully, her eyes widening as she revealed the silver flower. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "It reminded me of you," Liam said, "delicate but strong enough to bloom in harsh conditions." Their eyes met, and in that moment the weeks of separation fell away. Liam was suddenly conscious of how disheveled he must look, trail dust coating his clothes, his beard grown out, exhaustion etched in the lines of his face. "I should clean up before dinner," he said reluctantly. Victoria nodded, but before he could turn away, she surprised him by reaching up to touch his cheek gently. "I kept my promise, Liam. I'm still here." "And I kept mine," he replied, drawing her handkerchief from his pocket. "I brought this back to you along with my heart." Her smile was like sunrise after the longest night. "I'll take good care of both." As summer faded into autumn, Liam's position on the ranch evolved. Nathaniel, impressed with his work during the drive, promoted him to foreman when the previous one retired. The new role came with a small cabin on the property, a step up from the bunkhouse he'd shared with the other hands. He courted Victoria properly, with her uncle's blessing Sunday rides across the ranch land, dinners in town at the new hotel restaurant, quiet evenings on the porch watching the sunset. They spoke of dreams and fears, of the future and the past, each revelation bringing them closer together. One crisp October afternoon, Liam received a letter that would test his newfound commitment to honesty. It was from a lawyer in Silverton, informing him that one of the men he'd swindled had tracked him to Promise Creek and was threatening legal action. Liam sat on his cabin porch for a long time, the letter crumpled in his fist. His first instinct to run rose up like an old ghost before he firmly pushed it away. Running was the old Liam. The man he was becoming would face this head-on. That evening he sought out both Victoria and Nathaniel, laying the letter before them at the dining table. "My past has caught up with me," he said simply. "I need to go back to Silverton and make this right." Victoria reached for his hand. "We'll go together." "No," Liam shook his head. "This is my responsibility. I need to face it alone." "That's admirable," Nathaniel said, surprising him, "but unnecessary. North Liam, your family now, or near enough. Family stands together." The unexpected support threatened to undo him. "I can't ask you to be part of this." "Your reputations are not your concern," Victoria interrupted firmly. "My concern is for the man I love, who is finally facing his mistakes with courage." Her declaration, the first time she'd spoken of love so directly, left him momentarily speechless. "Besides," Nathaniel added pragmatically, "having a respected rancher and his niece accompany you might help negotiations go smoother. I've done some business with Judge Parker in Silverton. He's a fair man." In the end, Liam agreed to let them accompany him. The journey to Silverton took 3 days by train and stagecoach. As they approached the town where his downfall had begun, Liam's apprehension grew, but Victoria's steady presence beside him was an anchor in the storm of his anxiety. The meeting with his accusers was as difficult as he'd anticipated. In a small courtroom, Liam faced the 5 men he'd defrauded, their expressions ranging from anger to bitter satisfaction at having found him at last. Judge Parker presided with stern impartiality, listening as each man detailed the money lost in Liam's scheme. When it was his turn to speak, Liam stood, conscious of Victoria and Nathaniel watching from the gallery. "I won't offer excuses for what I did," he began. "I knew it was wrong even as I was doing it. I can only say that I'm not that man anymore." He turned to face his accusers directly. "I can't undo the hurt I caused, but I can try to make amends." He presented his proposal to repay the money he'd taken, with interest, in installments over the next 5 years. It would take most of his earnings as foreman, but he was prepared to live simply. "And if I fail to meet any payment," Liam concluded, "Mr. Donovan has agreed to hold the deed to my horse and equipment as collateral." Judge Parker considered the offer before looking to the plaintiffs. "Gentlemen, do you find these terms acceptable?" After some discussion, the men agreed. Papers were drawn up and signed, legally binding Liam to his promise of restitution. As they left the courthouse, one of the men, an older fellow with silver hair, approached Liam. "I didn't think we'd ever see a cent of that money," he admitted. "What changed you north?" Liam glanced at Victoria, who waited a short distance away. "I found something worth being honest for." The journey back to Promise Creek was lighter somehow, despite the financial burden Liam had taken on. As they traveled, he broached a subject he'd been considering for weeks. "I've been saving to buy a small parcel of land adjoining the ranch," he told Victoria as their stagecoach rumbled across the Colorado landscape. "Not much, but enough to build a home. With these repayments, it will take longer, but eventually. Are you proposing to me, Liam North?" Victoria asked, her eyes twinkling with amusement and something deeper. He laughed, caught in his roundabout approach. "I suppose I am, though not very well. I had a speech prepared. I'd like to hear it." Ignoring Nathaniel's poorly disguised interest from across the coach, Liam took Victoria's hands in his. "Victoria Donovan, you saw the truth in me when I couldn't see it in myself. You gave me a reason to be better, to face my past instead of running from it. I love you, and if you'll have me, I promise to spend every day earning the trust you've placed in me." Tears glistened in Victoria's eyes. "Yes," she said simply. "I will have you, Liam North, lies and truth and everything in between." "There'll be no more lies," he promised. "Only truth between us always." Her smile was radiant as she squeezed his hands. "Then start by telling me how soon we can be married. I find I'm not as patient as I once believed myself to be." Nathaniel cleared his throat. "As the only family present, I feel obligated to suggest spring." "Gives us time to build that house you mentioned, Liam." "Spring," Victoria protested. "But that's months away." "Worth waiting for," Liam said softly. "Like all the best truths." They were married the following April when wildflowers carpeted the hills around Promise Creek. The small church overflowed with well-wishers, ranch hands, townspeople. Even Judge Parker made the journey from Silverton to witness the union of the reformed liar and the woman who'd believed in his redemption. As they exchanged vows beneath a canopy of spring blossoms, Liam thought of the long, winding path that had led him to this moment, the mistakes and lies, the chance meeting in a dusty saloon, the simple challenge that had changed everything. "Then start telling me the truth." And he had, discovering in the process that truth was not just a burden to be carried, but a freedom to be embraced. With Victoria's hand in his and their future stretching before them, Liam North made one final promise to himself: to live every day in that freedom, worthy of the love he'd found when he'd finally stopped running from himself.